Call this Altoona City Council meeting to order for Monday, July 12th. We'll now have a moment of silent prayer. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Linda, would you call the roll, please?
Vice Mayor Butterbaugh.
Here.
Councilman Kashotti.
Here.
Councilman Carper.
Here.
Councilman Ickes.
Here.
Councilwoman Jordan is absent. Councilman Kelly.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Councilman Kelly.
Here.
Mayor Pacifico.
Here. We have a presentation on the agenda tonight. It is the Altoona Police Department Annual Report. I'll turn it over now to Chief Joe Merrill.
Thank you, Mayor. So I tried to include a couple different things that you all had asked over the last couple meetings. So it's the 2020 report, and then I have a couple slides in here to try to update you because obviously we're halfway through this year. I'll try to go through it pretty quick because I don't want to keep everyone here all night, but if there's something obviously I need to go back on, let me know. To start off with, this was our personnel report as of December 31st at the end of last year. As you all know, we were budgeted for 66 officers. At the end of the year, we had 3 vacancies. And I should note that 2 officers were in the academy for the vast majority of last year due to COVID. The academy was extended. They had to leave, come back, leave, and come back. Compared to this year's personnel report, this is year to date. As you know, we're budgeted for 62 now. We have 4 vacancies and 2 in the academy. Most of those vacancies are seen in the patrol division, and we haven't replaced the deputy chief. Activity report, we had a little over 22,000 calls for service in 2020. Just to put that in perspective, it's 61 calls per day. 427 calls per week. And we did experience a pretty sizable reduction in proactive enforcement efforts. I'll get into that a little more in some of the other slides where it'll make sense. Some of that proactivity was reduced due to COVID. A lot of it is because of manpower. On top of, if we have 8 officers on the street on a given shift, as opposed to 4, the extra officers, can do proactive activities. When we only have 4, most of it is reacting to calls. Additionally, a lot of the funding we have to deal with, we have state funding for speeding and aggressive driver complaints. That's overtime, DUI overtime. Drug task force makes up the vast majority of our drug enforcement. When officers are being mandated routinely to stay just to fill shifts, that's obviously less they're going to sign up. Either they can or they want, but that's less they're going to sign up for those proactive overtime details. I don't want to bore people too much, but I thought it would be worthwhile to note for anyone that isn't familiar with the UCR Uniform Crime Report versus the National Incident-Based Reporting Systems, or NIBRS. UCR is what's been used for decades. Anyone that's really familiar with it, it's not a good way to measure crime. It's pretty inaccurate. Which is why they're trying to switch to NIBRS. It is good to give you a snapshot, but there's some clear limitations with it. To start, there's what's called the hierarchy rule. So essentially, the UCR just looks at an incident, and if there's 8 crimes, someone broke into a house, committed burglary, stole some things, left, got into a foot chase with officers, got into a car, was DUI, wrecked the car, fought with officers. In the UCR, that will only count as 1 for the most serious offense, which in that case would be burglary. All those other crimes would not be counted. So when you start looking, and I'll explain a little more when I get there, when you start looking at Part 2 crimes, so Part 1 crimes, as I have listed here, those are the 8 most serious offenses. When you start looking at Part 2 crimes, often those numbers are reduced because they're often associated with a different crime. Only one crime for one incident is counted, with very few exceptions. And there are almost no details. To be quite frankly, it's the academics that are trying to push for NIBRs, but there's no details about the incident itself. So any trying to look at it and try to figure out trends and things like that, the academics can't do that. So with NIBRs, what they're trying to switch to, and they've been trying to switch to for the last 2 years, which has been problematic because RMS systems have been transferred over to be NIBRs compatible. However, and that's messed up the data because they're not ready to receive it yet. Both the state police and the FBI are the ones that are receiving these numbers. But ultimately, their goal is to remove the hierarchy rule. So for each criminal incident, there will be any applicable crime will be counted. They are warning everyone that this will obviously appear when NIBRs finally kicks in, that there's a vast increase in crime because now every crime is being counted, not just the most serious offense. Instead of calling them Part 1, they're going to call them Group A, and it's more identifying 20 major crimes instead of 8 for the Part 1 offenses. And the goal of it is to track more detail about the actual offense. Was there weapons used? How was the offense committed? More information on the persons involved, relationships to the victim, biographical information, and more detail about property. And again, the goal is so that they can do more analytics. So I say all that. All the information that I'm about to present on here is based off of UCR because that's what we are still using. Again, it's not a good thing to live and die by, but it does give you a rough snapshot. Starting off with the officer's assaulted report, based off the UCRs, there was a reduction, approximately 11%, as you can see. We went from 130 to 116. Homicides really, obviously, is the big one on everyone's brain. We had 4 homicides over the course of 3 incidents in 2020, which obviously is tragic. I will say that we were able to make arrests on every one of those, and that was due to, on top of a lot of hard work by the different divisions in the Altoona Police Department. We had a lot of help from other agencies, the Office of Attorney General, PSP, Blair County District's Attorney's Office, and there's many others that I'm probably not giving credit to. And also, we had a lot of cooperation from the community. They really assisted in the investigation, which is not something that every police department can say, but in these homicides, the community did help us greatly in leading to the arrests. All of those are still working their way through the court systems. And again, I can highlight anything you folks want to see, but I mean, we're just going through the numbers. 68 rapes, which is slightly down. Robbery offenses, these slides are all the Part 1 offenses. Robbery offenses, a slight increase. This is the one I wanted to highlight for a second. Obviously, you can see, you don't have to be a mathematician to see that 2019 was a statistical anomaly. That could be either because there was an inordinate amount, or probably more realistically is that some of the data issues between systems switching over to NIBRs and not being able to. Either way, you can clearly see that it's not an accurate compared to the other years. If you took that 90 and compared it to the average of 2015 through 2018, you can see that's just slightly up. However, on paper, there is a 43% decrease, which if you remember that, you know, that 159, that'll come up in another slide here in a second. Burglary offenses, again, are trending down. Larcenies, however, at least compared to the last 2 years, are trending up, although when compared to a 5-year, you can see we're still slightly down. Motor vehicle thefts are counted separate in the UCRs, and you can see they continue to go up. And arsons, we had 3 more arsons than we did in 2019 charged. So these are the Part 2 offenses, and I know there's a lot of data on the screen. I just want to highlight a couple of them. So other assaults, these are the simple assaults, the ones that are not, you know, don't cause serious bodily injury or potential death. A lot of our domestic violence cases fall into this category, and obviously you can see a continued rise in that. This one's somewhat alarming. Weapons carry and possession, you can see we doubled from 2019. And again, although to me, this crime is serious. If you remember the hierarchy rule I'm talking about, so these 30 are just 30 incidents where there wasn't something else charged. So, homicides, there's weapons charges, aggravated assaults, things like that. Those incidents don't count here because of the hierarchy rule. These would be 30 incidents where the gun charge was the most serious charge. Drug violations, I have a couple slides to specifically talk about it. Drug violations, DUIs, a couple of the other Part 2s. When there's a reduction in these, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's less drugs in the community or there's less people drinking and driving. It often is a direct correlation to our ability to be proactive. These offenses, especially drug violations, and again, I'll get a little more into it, predominantly are proactive investigations that we do. And I wanted to highlight this one because this one isn't great either. Offenses against family or children, you can see the drastic increase. The vast majority of these would be the endangering welfare of children. We experience really two main types. One being we are called to a house for whatever reason, often to assist CYF, and the house is just in such horrible living conditions that it was a danger to the child. We then have other ones where the parents, often due to drug activity, are engaging in activity that also endangers the child.
Wasn't that really part of a national trend too during COVID, that they were seeing more instances of that which some folks attributed to people being stuck inside and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would hate to pin it all on COVID.
No,
I think it's a little bit of a combination from exactly what you're talking about. Also, if I'm being honest, what was the acceptable standard of a house and the conditions for children to live in 20 years ago is vastly different than today. So as the courts and CYF, a lot of these calls are initiated by CYF following up on something and then calling us. And I think that happens more today than it has in the past. Overall, the UCRs, and this is where I wanted to just, again, in being transparent, if you look at the Part 1 offenses, you can see approximately a 7% rise. If you factored in that 159, that kind of skewed the stats a little bit. This probably is closer to 9 or 10%. Part 2 offenses are pretty much the same, and an overall total crime rate increase of 2%. Which again, if you factored in those 50 or so aggravated assaults, probably would be closer to 3%. Our clearance rate for 2020, I think if you looked at the national average, you would see these are pretty much on par, if not a little better. Part 1 offenses historically have lower clearance rate than Part 2 offenses. Again, it's just the nature. Generally, often Part 2 offenses, a DUI is a perfect example. That's an automatic clearance because I'm arresting you for DUI. I arrested you, and that's separate from, hey, someone broke into my house last night and we don't know who did it. So you will always see Part 2 offenses being a higher clearance rate than Part 1 offenses, and overall we have a 56.2% clearance rate for 2020. Traffic enforcement and parking tickets, again, you can see the reduction in the proactive enforcement, approximately 500 less total traffic citations issued. That spread across specifically VASCAR citations, which are speeding violations and other violations. As far as the traffic accidents, we responded to approximately 1,100 traffic accidents. 46 of those accidents were related to DUI. Again, that number is probably a little low due to the hierarchy rule, but we did have 0 fatalities last year in traffic accidents. Going back, here's just a view of the DUIs. I apologize, I got ahead of myself. You can see we had a little more DUI enforcement than we did in 2019, but ultimately the trend keeps going down. This is where we're going back to the drug offenses like I had talked about. There's two things to look at here. Number one, again, most of our drug enforcement is proactive. We only have, and for a long time now, have only had one detective assigned full-time to narcotics. Everything else we do narcotics related is either relying on other agencies assisting us or officers doing it as a secondary duty in addition to their patrol work. whether it is an investigation, a planned investigation, controlled buys, or targeted enforcement of a specific target, or it's officers out conducting traffic stops in high crime areas, hoping to stumble into drugs and things like that. They're often proactive. The other thing too is the quality of the investigation can't be measured by UCRs. Again, it's just a tally mark. So, these are 3 pictures from 3 different investigations that by pretty much anyone's standards were good investigations and resulted in, a sizable seizure. In the UCRs, those are just 3 tally marks. And those 3 tally marks are no different than, a couple bags of crack cocaine that the person admits to selling. So there is also, when we talk about limited resources, we're trying to work with other agencies to do more quality investigations than necessarily just numbers-wise. I tried to give you another matrix to kind of wrap the head around, drug use. So these overdose reports, these are overdoses where we did not make an arrest. We didn't arrest anyone for possession or paraphernalia. We didn't arrest someone for obstructing the investigation or delivery or anything like that. These are just overdoses that we responded to. We assisted with medical care and, got them to the hospital through usually AMED. So you can see it, almost doubled from 2019 to 2020 overdoses. The fatal overdose numbers were provided to me by the Blair County Coroner, Patty Ross. You can see a drastic increase there. This year to date, we have 12 confirmed, and there's 10 pending toxicology. That takes a while to come back. Once they come back, it'll realistically be 22. We have seen a drastic increase in fentanyl in our heroin and sometimes straight fentanyl, and then the mixing of that with the methamphetamine that we're now getting in crystal form, often from cartel-style meth labs, is leading to the drastic overdoses. Naloxone, or Narcan, as some people call it, usage, you can see that's up. And the interesting thing about that is, as the years have gone on, there's more Narcan and naloxone available to the average citizen now than there ever was. So often we don't even get called anymore, or often when we do get called, they've already been administered Narcan or naloxone prior to our arrival. And you can still see, even with that being a factor, we are still administering. These numbers are our actual.
That's what I was just going to ask
Yeah.
you. These are your officers.
These are the officers actually administering naloxone themselves. So again, our overdose rate is extremely high. There have been some questions about juvenile crimes and juvenile arrests, so I put these numbers together. I'll start at the bottom and work my way back. So total arrests between 2019 and 2020 were down. But again, when you talk about those Part 2 offenses and being proactive, that doesn't surprise me. When you see runaways reported are down, that doesn't surprise me either, given that most of the year last year, children weren't in school. A lot of our runaway reports are a result of either the school district being involved or, sometimes parents calling in a runaway because they're afraid that if they don't report it, there could be issues with truancy. So really what I would focus on is the Part 1 crimes with juveniles went from 27 to 57, which obviously is pretty alarming. And I don't know that I'm qualified to give you guys a 100% answer on why that's happening. I can tell you that obviously I would, nationally, I think there's a trend in juvenile, the change in juvenile behavior as a whole. I believe it was about 2018, even the state of Pennsylvania started an initiative to try to stop detaining as many juveniles. I believe the thought process was, if we detain them less, it costs less, and we can focus more money on rehabilitative efforts. I don't know that money or the rehabilitative efforts ever caught up. I can tell you from our point of view, we've had extreme problems, and it's becoming harder to get juveniles detained. And so I'm clear, I don't think a kid throwing a rock in a mailbox or stealing a pack of gum should be detained in a detention facility. I'm talking about juveniles that are caught with firearms, large quantity of drugs, committing robberies, aggravated assaults, sometimes on their own family members. The procedure for us, which we're stuck with, is when we arrest a juvenile for an offense that as an adult would get them arraigned, we have to contact juvenile probation, Blair County Juvenile Probation. They're the ones that make the final say on whether we're allowed to detain them or if we have to release them. It is extremely hard for us to convince them that a juvenile needs to be detained on even these violent, and in some cases, even recently, we've been ordered to release the juvenile back to the parent or guardian that they had just violently assaulted. And there's a disconnect from our point of view when dealing with juvenile probation and CYF on whose realm it falls into when we have to release them. And I think the district attorney, Pete Weeks, has talked about this recently. That is also a trend going on through the Blair County courts too. A lot of our serious offenses, including homicides and attempted homicides, involve juveniles that should have been detained and or addressed and were not. And when we have juveniles that are committing violent offenses, and again, I'm not talking about the ones that are stealing packs of gum and things like that, when the biggest stick in their way is us holding them for 2 or 3 hours at the Altoona police station before they get released, and then it fizzling out through the juvenile court system, there's really no motive for them to change their behavior. And I don't know that I'm qualified to give you an absolute answer on that, but that is absolutely what the Altoona Police Department is experiencing. So much so that we've, luckily with the support of District Attorney Weeks, many juvenile offenses, well, not many, I shouldn't say that at all. Some of the juvenile offenses qualify under law if it's a certain offense and they're a certain age and a certain type of conduct. With the district attorney's permission, we're allowed to direct file. And what that means is we file them as adults, we treat them as adults, they get arraigned as an adult, and the district attorney's response has been approving in homicides and a couple of the recent attempted homicides. Is that's how we've been trying to circumnavigate having to release these juveniles.
But that's going to be only for pretty egregious circumstances.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to
the vast-
misquote.
Yeah, the vast majority. Okay, I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you, and I apologize.
No, you're fine. So yeah, I don't want to misquote the actual statute. It's open to the public. It's the most serious of offenses. The juvenile has to be a certain age, and it has to be their second or subsequent offense, or it has to be their first offense and there was a weapon used. And yes, that's a very limited set. For the most part, we have no choice, and when we call and we're told we have to release them, we have to release them.
So some of those examples that you gave earlier, Chief, with weapons, I guess, would fall into that, but drugs, et cetera, may
Yeah.
not.
No, and even the mere possession of a firearm would not fall into that category of being able to attempt to direct file. They would, the mere possession of a firearm, depending on the circumstance, would get us. We'd call the juvenile probation office and ask for, them to be detained, and they would either say yes or no, and we would have to comply with whatever we're told.
Is there intent that has to be? Do you have to prove an intent or anything like that? I mean, I'm stunned here.
No, it would have to be used in, and again, I don't want to misquote the section, but the best example would be the recent 2 shootings we had in the last 3 or 4 months. We charged attempted homicide. Attempted homicide is a listed crime. There was obviously a weapon used, and the juveniles met the age requirement, so we were able to direct file there.
Well, and that's why I raised this whole issue the other month about juvenile crime, because we're seeing, and maybe it's just because it makes the front page of the local newspaper, and there's a lot of chatter about it. But when you see, I can't recall where we've had instances where we have juveniles involved with handguns and shots being fired. It's aimed at someone else. We had a homicide and where the victim and everybody involved were all juveniles last year. You see where our school district now is on the one hand, I think, well, that's a good idea that they're making them use the clear plastic backpacks, but yet on the other hand, as a parent who has 2 kids that are in the public schools, I go, wow. Makes me angry on the one hand and really concerned on the other. So, I mean, at some point, one of the things I want to ask you is, and whether you want to address that now or at the end of your report, what can we as city council do to try to help you here? Because, I mean, it just seems like you talk about revolving door. I mean, this is a great example of it.
Yeah, and your concerns are absolutely warranted, and maybe I am getting a little ahead of the presentation, but
Sorry, but
that's
I mean,
why I
it's
did the part 1 crimes, because you're right. There's a significant increase, and again, I caution everyone. I don't like to live and die by UCR reports. there's a part of it that when there are more drugs and there are more guns, there's more crime. That crime is not only going to be seen in adults, and that's going to be juveniles. We absolutely need to get our manpower back up. We are not at the point, and I believe the UCRs would prove it, at least from the snapshot, but back 2005 through 2007, we were having a lot of shootings. We had juveniles, shootings and things like that. The response was more manpower. We got up to 74 officers. We had an entire directed patrol unit that was made up of 5 officers and 1 supervisor that was part-time, and they did nothing but proactive investigations. We had the luxury of having DA Weeks. That was about the time he got hired and was the drug prosecutor, and he was very successful and some really good prosecutions. And there's also the flip side of that coin, is not just the enforcement effort, but there is some value in officers being able to do proactive community programs, walking parks, school things, but every one of these things require manpower.
But besides and manpower is the obvious one, but besides that, if you're making arrests, then they're going home in 2 or 3 hours. Because the state's saying that. I mean, is there something we can be doing to
So
lobby our legislators, lobby the Harrisburg and the governor to try to?
We're probably getting into an area that's out of my expertise, but
Okay.
absolutely, and I would direct you. Again, I've had this conversation. I just had the conversation with the director of the school police a week ago when I was signing some paperwork for him, and his frustration with juvenile probation and their abilities now that the kids are back in school. It's a county level issue that I think is a mirror of a statewide issue.
That's what I was going to say.
And I would encourage.
What they're doing is reflective of the state initiative. Their hands may be tied.
Yes.
I mean, but is it worth us as a city council talking to the district attorney to maybe see what we could do to be working?
I
We're not
would
the only
believe.
community that's experiencing this.
Correct, and I believe DA Weeks would be really open to that opportunity, and in my experience with DA Weeks, he wouldn't sugarcoat it and would absolutely tell you what you guys could do to help.
All right.
And I do agree with that.
Thank you.
I just want to highlight a couple other events in 2020. Start with last year we lost Deputy Chief Tony Alianello. He passed away April 8th after 50 years of service. We were able to dedicate the downstairs roll call room in his honor. Due to COVID, it didn't get the pomp and circumstance that it probably deserved, although anyone that knew Tony would probably agree he would have hated it if it was a big fanfare. I could probably spend all night talking about him, but again, anyone that knew him, he set the standard on work ethic and caring, not only for the community, but for the officers he was in charge of. Also last year, we were able to purchase enough equipment and get the required training for all patrol officers to be certified to carry tasers. That started August 2020. Prior to that, only supervisors had tasers. Our taser policy matches PLEAC accreditation standards. In addition, our yearly training exceeds, it used to be called Taser, the company that makes tasers is now called Axon, but it exceeds Axon's standards. Since when we're pretty much at the year mark here almost, we've only had 3 taser deployments. Anyone that is certified to use a taser, or certainly anyone certified as an instructor, will tell you that a taser is an excellent tool for a very limited set of circumstances. However, its presence often is enough to prevent the situation from escalating to the point where the taser has to be utilized. And I would argue that as many calls and disturbances our guys and gals go on, that only using the taser 3 times in a year is a credit to our policy, our training, and ultimately the discretion of the men and women using it. Community events, again, as everything was limited due to COVID-19, we were able to raise a little over $7,000 for the PA Special Olympics through the Polar Plunge. The Special Olympics is something that our department has continued to try to support, and we think it's a great cause, and we've been continuing to support it this year. Several officers also participated in a Night to Shine prom. It was hosted by Catalyst Church and the Tim Tebow Foundation. It was an event to let teenagers with special needs have a prom-style celebration. Appreciate them allowing us to participate in that. We also did Cocoa with a Popo, that Green Bean Coffee House hosted, and the whole point of that was to try to get officers and juveniles interacting and try to break some of the barriers in between. And then we had the first annual APD Christmas tree decoration, where we purchased these little kits for different types of decorations. Kids could come in, get them, customize and build them, and then we allowed them to hang them on a couple Christmas trees in the lobby. At the same time, we did Toys for Tot drive that was very successful. And Professional Auto Bodies always every year allows us to participate Santa visits with them. This year it was 15 local families that benefited 46 children that had a little better Christmas than they would have without their charitable. And then just real quick, 2021 goals and progress. Again, as I kind of already stumbled into, addressing our manpower needs. We're functionally at 56 on the street right now. We have 3 that are leaving in August. We are in the process this week of offering conditional offers, which is one of many steps to get people through the MOPEC standards in hopes of hiring new officers here in August. Most of them have to go to the academy. When we hire someone, the academy is 6 months long, and then when they graduate the academy, there's at least a 14-week training program. So to put it in perspective, it was actually my first day as acting chief. I was able to hire 2 officers. The timing worked out. Those officers are still in the academy today, and we don't expect them to actually be on the street counting towards manpower till December, and I hired them March 1st. The patrol CID rotation program, we started, the first group was in June. They've been up there for a little over a month. Essentially what we're trying to do is career development for patrol officers, assigning them to the Criminal Investigations Division for 6-month rotations, where they'll get increased experience and training in investigative techniques, search warrants, cell phone extractions, interviewing and interrogation. When their rotation is done, they will go back to the patrol division, which will benefit the patrol division, obviously, and a lot of these will turn out to be FTOs that will then help teach the new officers. Again, it's a career development. It's a good opportunity for officers, and it also benefits the department because right now it's putting a little bit extra help in our CID division that's having a hard time keeping up with the caseload that they're having. We're going to continue to collaborate with other agencies, the Office of Attorney General, PSP, Blair County District Attorney's Office, and I alluded to this a little bit. We're having more and more meetings trying to figure out how to best utilize resources so that we're getting more qualitative investigations and enforcement activities. We've always had an excellent training program and had high training standards. We want to continue that, but also we recognize that we need to continually assess the best standards for the profession, and our training needs to adapt. So we have things in place to continue to assess that. And then policy reviews, we've always reviewed our policies as things come up, but we're proactively looking at our policies to, again, make sure that we're responding to community needs and making sure that we're within the best practices as they change over time. And lastly, but certainly not least important, especially with COVID last year, we want to continue and increase our community interactions, make sure that we are, again, I referenced earlier that we benefit from having an extremely good relationship with our community. And if you look nationwide, that's not always the case with police departments. So we want to make sure we're doing everything in our power to continue that and try to build upon that. And I know that was a lot of material pretty quick. So if I need to go back on anything, please let me know.
Chief, I have just 2 really quick questions. The homicide chart, does that include minors and juveniles? I mean, in 2020, it was saying that there were 4
Yes.
homicides. In 2019, it was 0.
Correct.
And that's including the minors and juveniles that we discussed on tonight?
So yeah, the one homicide that was referenced, there was a juvenile victim, and that was one of the 4 victims last night. That's not 4 arrests, that's 4 victims of homicide. And I guess that's my apology. This chart's a little unique. So there was 4 homicides committed. So the 4 victims over 3 incidents, not arrests.
Okay.
And I apologize that I didn't.
No, I understand. Thank you for clearing that up for me. The second question I had was the screen on officer assault. This is more of a curiosity question. I saw that there were a few months that kind of trend is higher over the 2 years. If you look at April, June, I was just wondering if you had any ideas as to why that was.
Honestly, other than, when it's nice out, we're busier. The more we're busy, the more we interact with people. But no, I honestly would be guessing as to why. You look down to October in 2019, and you can see that it's 21. So I don't know that there is a real discernible pattern.
Okay. I didn't know if that was something that was tracked or not. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Chief, really appreciate your report this evening. I think that more than covered a variety of different items that we needed to see here as a governing body. And I know I spoke a couple months ago, but I'll reiterate the point that I absolutely stand with us getting back to where we were pre-COVID levels in the police department, and anything that this governing body can do to help APD and our community. I think COVID allowed the opportunity for drug activity to kind of go quiet, but nonetheless it be here, and the impact still probably still percolating through the community. And I think, I don't want to speak for the whole body, but I think we all kind of stand in that same agreement that we're not going to let this community be destroyed by it. So I really appreciate the efforts by you and your department.
Thank you.
Does anybody have anything else for Chief Merrill? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Okay, before we get into public comment, I would like to announce that prior to the meeting tonight, we had an executive session to discuss consideration for acquisition of real estate and potential litigation. And we will also be introducing a resolution tonight that Linda will now read.
The resolution is authorizing the city solicitor to proceed with filing the necessary paperwork to initiate an eminent domain proceeding with respect to the real property located at 1306 11th Avenue in the city of Altoona.
Thank you. This time, we'll open the floor for public comment. If anybody would like to address council, you may do so by going to the podium and stating your name and address for the record. And also, if anybody would like to call in from home, you will be able to do so with the number and access code on your screen. And the floor is now open.
Hi, my name is Russell Geiner, resident 1200 Adams Avenue. We live in between the two highways down there where Valley View and Pleasant Valley split. And we have a big problem along Brush Run. And we're trying to get some answers to why we're not getting any resolution to these. First of all, there's a major issue with the pipeline running between Valley View and Pleasant Valley. From Valley View down to Pleasant Valley, it's a downhill slope, and it all feeds Brush Run. So what we have happening is there's a pipe underneath Valley View Boulevard, which is up towards the Swiss Club, if anybody's available or knows that area. That pipe is 3 foot in diameter, approximately. I'm giving some estimates here, but you go down to where the townhouses are, there's a grate there, it runs down, it drops down to 2.5 feet. Then it goes to the alleyway below the townhouses, it drops down to about 2 feet. And then below that, at Adams Avenue, it drops down to 18 inches. And that's what I replaced underneath my driveway when we put a driveway in there. So there's an 18-inch pipe running from Adams Avenue to the creek. And that is causing all the water to flow out of the pipe. So obviously it can't handle 3 foot of water when we have that crazy rain like we had. But the water is coming through the pipes, pushed up out of the pipes, and it's going down directly down Adams Avenue, creating a flood issue for the folks down Adams Avenue, and I know there's a big problem down, all the way down to probably 15th Street, but the whole Brush Run Creek area I'm referring to needs cleaned out. Desperately needs cleaned up and cleaned out because so much overgrowth is in there that the water can't flow. So we have a big issue with the water flow getting through there, but just getting the water to the creek is really causing a lot of issues. So I would like to know if there's a contact we can get with the city here that we can find out any kind of resolution that's going to be coming through, what the city has to plan for this, and what can be done when we find out any issues that we have. What can we get resolved here? So there's obviously a problem with 3 foot of water trying to get into 1 foot, 1.5 feet. So there's an obvious problem there, and it's not getting any attention as far as I can see. So if somebody could step in and answer some questions on that, or any kind of resolutions happening to that problem?
I'd just like to say that, sir, we are looking at a number of different stormwater projects in the city, and the Pleasant Valley area is certainly high on that priority list. We don't have specifics. That's just a generalized statement right now. I can, if Nate, you want to talk about more about the specifics of what that project might look like, feel free.
So, yeah, Public Works got your letter, emails, neighbors' emails. The superintendent was out and talked to one of the neighbors out there. And we did go down and we did find the pipe. And, yeah, there is a 36-inch pipe that runs under the road, and then it necks down. Whether or not the hydraulic grade line in that particular storm, I don't think any pipe, even a 36-inch pipe, would have helped anything.
agree.
But we agree with you 100%. We have some issues. Your 12th Street that's kind of a specific issue because there's the physician's office across the street, and you have a bunch of conduits running into a larger pipe. So council's blessed me with some money here in our last spending plan to look at some planning in that area. So 12th Street would be kind of its own little problem within a bigger problem. But, I mean, to identify the sources that would be on the I-99 side of the road is first and foremost. And, you know, anything that's considered a headwater would be something that we would look at. But really, other than retaining the water above where you guys are at, the pavement area down through there is just such it's so impervious that every time it happens, there's just very limited things that can be done other than to try to retain. I think there's a creek that comes down by 8th Street up in there, maybe trying to do something there. I think up above 15th Street, there's some issues up there. And we're really just trying to identify, and it would be a planning document. So basically, we would identify what the issues are. So as you're saying, 12th Street is one of those areas where there's an issue. So we know that there's something that, you know, that's kind of a hot button that we would look at trying to do some type of fix. But generally speaking, we have anything that we look at, we're going to have to make sure we do it methodically, because we may get the water away from you quicker and we may give it to somebody else.
That's obviously what's going to happen.
Yeah. So,
That's
I mean,
gonna happen, yeah.
unfortunately, that's where we're at in that entire area. I mean, by today's standards, I'm not sure that you would build houses as close as what you would to Brush Run if it was today. As far as the dredging goes, the city doesn't own the creek. The property owners own both sides of it. I think you guys experienced what happens when you put things too close to the creek. They end up in the creek, like dumpsters and neon signs and things of that nature, plywood, you know, there's just those type of things to deal with too. So it's a large issue. I can tell you that I was going to address the neighborhood with a letter to let you guys know, hey, we hear you, and this is what we're kind of up to. So at this point in time, we're going to enlist an engineer to, you know, just the knowledge that we have in our office of the different concerns up through that entire neighborhood, both on the city side and the valley side, and just see what we have. Again, this, just because we do the planning document, there's still the funding mechanism to get any of these improvements put in also.
I
So,
understand that.
I mean, that's where we're at right now. Like 12th Street, the answer may be to widen it, get some more curbing in there to minimize erosion, and then also increase the pipe size coming down through there. So it's just at that point that's where we're at. I don't know if that answers your question, but
Well, sort of, but not, I mean, it doesn't say that it's gonna happen next month, right?
Yeah.
So here's I mean, next week we'd have another storm like this. It just happened yesterday. So, one of the other things I would like to ask is, what could be done about the, Altoona neon problem with the, debris? Is there any kind of a code that could be followed up with that? He brings his material back from a job and just puts it outside in his backyard. Well, obviously washed all those signs down and debris from the signs into the creek, and that ends up clogging everything up. So, yeah, there's a lot of overgrowth in that creek that could be cleared out by each individual, but you're depending on everybody down there to do that. So if the next guy down doesn't do it, he's hammered.
yeah,
So-
it's a problem.
Oh, I know. And so-
don't disagree with you.
Yeah, and it also is it PennDOT's issue at all with the, putting a 3-foot pipe to start with. I mean, they fed that water down to me saying, here, good luck, buddy.
And that would be something that we would look at. I can't speak to that. PennDOT basically hands off any subsurface drainage to the municipality. So even though they put the pipes in, we take care of them after the fact. So it may be, instead of replacing all the pipe, we may be able to just throttle down that 36-inch pipe to an 18-inch opening, but then we have to make sure that we're not affecting everybody. There's so many gears in this machine so that's, I mean, as far as the Altoona neon thing goes, we have a floodplain ordinance that we need to look at. I actually said that last week to Public
much
Works
debris.
Department, that they can't have things in the floodway, I believe, and there may be some things that codes can do too. So we'll just have to look at that. That is an issue. I agree.
Okay. We were told earlier, and this is all a word of mouth thing, but we were told that there was some kind of we should not even have houses built there, and you kind of addressed that, or somebody did earlier, that those houses shouldn't be built that close to that creek. So because of being floodplain, that is not a sustainable creek. It dries a bone in the summertime. August, it's dry as it can be. So it's not sustaining life. It's not so that when that dries up, I mean, all the fish that are in there, good luck. I don't know what they do. They die off, I guess. So, is there any avenue here we could look into getting this declared an emergency situation where FEMA would step in and maybe start looking at buying these houses out?
I am not qualified
How do we
to
how do we
answer
get to that point? How do we get FEMA involved, or somebody that would get, like the situation happened out in El Dorado with Logan Valley Mall? They bought 7 or so homes out there. Those people don't have a flood problem no more. So, yeah. So,
Yeah, there has to be a disaster declared.
right. So how do we get to that point? Well, I mean, we're standing here saying our homes are flooded. There's business been flooded, and it could happen next week again. So I've done it 3 or 5 times. I don't know. I've lived there over 20 years, and I've done it numerous times. So I've lost myself. I don't know where to go. So we'd like some help. If we need bought out, we need bought out. We'll have to accept what we get there, but we want some help if we can get it from anybody that can help us here. So any communication we can get, I don't know who we need to talk to. And Nate, is it you that we need to communicate with to get a report going as far as the progress goes with this, or?
Yeah, as we get into this, we have one area that we've started. Yours would be next, and then, as we get into this, we can definitely keep everybody abreast of what's happening. We would have a public meeting, of course, after we get some initial things kind of brought up, and that's kind of how we envision these projects going would be, we identify the things based upon, you know, the 50 or 60 complaints that we hear. Here are some ideas we have. Let's have a public meeting and have, you know, you guys come in and look at them and say, yeah, I like that, or no, I don't like that at all. And then, you know, that at my level, that's about all we can do. And then look at, hey, well, how, you know, this seems like this may help. Let's try to fund it. So that's, you know, but until we come up with solutions, we can't really, we're just kind of hitting a dartboard with, you know,
Well, I can tell you a
money.
solution, make that pipe bigger. That would certainly help.
It helps
To
your
start.
problem, but it doesn't help. You
Well,
know, that's again,
The water
that's
has to go
that's-
somewhere, sir, right? I'm not.
I
being a
understand
smartass,
that,
I'm
but
just saying.
again, I mean, when we touch something at this point, you know, we're liable for it, I guess, for lack of a better term. So we may be helping you out, but we may be hurting somebody else. So we have to be very careful of that type of
Okay,
activity.
well, if you're
That's-
liable for it, then, I mean, I'm thinking my house has got a basement full of water sometimes.
Again,
Liable?
that's where we're at right now.
Okay, all right. And another question would be, like, the project down at 15th Street. That's come to a standstill, and there's no progress being made? Anybody have an update on what's going on with the
From
PennDOT
what,
deal down there?
from what I gathered from PennDOT, that they had an issue with subsurface condition, and they were to, I was off last week, but I was told that they were very close to repaving, getting started again to open 15th Street back up. Is that what you're
Yeah,
referring
yeah,
to?
it just
Yeah.
stopped there, nobody's moving anything.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the official word I got.
So, and there's no cleanup crew. There was a cleanup crew involved years back. Came through there and cleaned things out. In fact, they left a tree lay sideways in my creek that right now has limbs growing out of it because it didn't die off, and it's plugging everything up. It's causing more of a problem that they created when they came through and cleaned that up. So, is there any way we can get help getting that creek cleaned out?
You
I
guys,
know you're not asking to, I'm not asking to dredge it. I'm just saying get the brush cleaned out of it.
it's private property. It's whoever owns that. It's not a navigable stream, so it's, you know, you guys own to the center line. So if it's on your side, you could, or if it's your neighbors, then they should. That's just how, staffing wise, that's, I don't know what has happened in the past, but that's
Oh, yeah,
where
there
we're
was a
at.
crew that used to clean that in regular, like in the summertime and go down through that, I guess.
Well, there
Clean
was,
that
in
up.
years past, there was some volunteer effort that was done on Mill Run Stream a couple of times, but that's been a few years ago. I think, you know, a couple things here. First and foremost, probably the most immediate thing we could do would be look about possible code violations regarding debris that's put in the floodway that's getting washed in and causing the problem. I think the second thing we can do is look back to see who initiated that effort in Mill Run Stream for the cleanup, because I know that that was done, because I remember going and volunteering and helping to do it, to pull all those shopping carts that ended up in Mill Run. So maybe we could look at that as a possibility for Brush Run to be a candidate on that. The third thing would be, we can also look to see the properties that were taken on Browning Avenue and Kentucky Avenue, in that area out there. We can look to see what program and what dollars were taken on that and how that was done, and we can do that. The bigger picture is what Nate's alluding to, and that's, you know, unfortunately, I can't tell you that something's going to happen and be taken care of tomorrow, because,
understand.
but we are looking at that. And this area is one of several areas that we've got stormwater problems in the city. Now, you know, Nate's looking at it. He's got some planning dollars for Public Works to look at that, and we're going to try to do that. And we do have some money that the city has come into, and stormwater management projects have been a big topic of discussion for use with some of the ARP money from the federal government. So, and not to be a smart aleck, but that's kind of a fluid situation on how the money's going to get used. But I mean, that's what I can tell you right now. But I think those first three things we can look at: one, about the debris and whether that's a code violation, and trying to help with that so that it doesn't keep ending up in there. We can also try to find out about who spearheaded and took care of that cleanup effort in Mill Run, and maybe we can replicate that for Brush Run, and then also look at the program dollars that were used to buy out those homes.
Yeah.
And that at least is a little bit more immediate and to your problem.
Right.
So,
So this flooding issue does qualify for that money that,
I don't know.
I think it's definitely a contender.
Yeah.
It appears
I-
to be the top contender as far as how stringent the rules are.
When you say
or
for
aren't.
buying properties or for
No.
doing stormwater projects?
stormwater projects,
Yeah, I
not
mean,
buying properties.
stormwater management projects would qualify for the ARP money.
Yes.
I'm sorry, yeah.
All right, yes.
The program for buying houses, that I don't know.
Probably not for buying houses,
So-
but definitely the
That-
stormwater.
Yeah, I don't think that would cover that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we keep getting some of these freak rains that we've really never really experienced before, and it's
Seems to be
creating
getting worse.
problems in a lot of places in the city. And I know that, telling you that doesn't make your situation any better, but we at least are cognizant and we know what's going on, and we're trying to address that. It's just that
Very
some
good.
of these things take longer than others.
Okay.
And I'm sorry that we don't have a better answer than that.
Appreciate your help, and any way we can keep in touch to keep this thing.
And
open,
we have,
so-
we have your name and address, right, so that we can be back in
Great.
touch with you? Okay.
Thank you,
All right, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ken Biddle. While we're on the stormwater stuff, I'm here to address the 400 block on 7th Avenue. I'm not sure how much that's been brought to the attention yet. I would gladly take the stormwater over the sewer water coming up. When we get these storms, it's going in, and they have the water all diverting into the sewer now, and so that all backs up into our basements. Past month 3 times. I think it was once or twice before that this year. There's a screening down in there. The first time it happened, the guy come up and said he apologized, he didn't have the screens cleaned out. And that made the whole sewer come up through the basement. Okay, he says it happens again, let me know. Happens again, they even come up and cleaned it up the second time. But now it's happened 2 more times since that. So I don't know how much we're aware of the problem. I have 3 houses on that property. It's right there beside J.C. Orr. I know he has problems with it and all. I'm wondering if that's been brought to the attention or what's going on that situation.
This is the first I'm hearing of it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's why I even come over tonight, because I thought, the guys from the sewer water department keep telling me, someone's gonna have to go complain or whatever, so that's why I came tonight, to bring it to the attention. And I've not even really talked to the other homeowners. Like I say, I got 2 properties there. One, we're right in the middle of remodeling and doing all the work, and the furnaces got ruined, the brand new furnaces got ruined, sitting there waiting to be installed. And it's a real issue. Like I say, when that sewer's coming back, and they want me to put in backflow traps.
Yeah, I was
So I
just gonna
talked to my
say that.
plumber about that. Well, that's gonna be a total maintenance thing for me. That, once they clog up, I'm gonna have to be digging them up constantly and cleaning them and all that. I shouldn't have to do that. I shouldn't have to put traps in for your pushing sewer back up into the house.
Excuse me, sir, what was the address you mentioned?
The 200, which you had?
What's the
200 and 400 block at 7th Avenue. One's 4087, right beside J.C. Orr. The other one's 219, I believe, 7th Avenue.
All right, thank you.
So what I'm being told by them is that I guess it's got diverted where the stormwaters are getting put into the sewer, and that's the issue. And what I'm questioning is, where's that getting put in to the sewer into the sewer to back up to us, and why can't the main line have a trap put in to keep it from backing up to us? Unless they're putting it in way up higher, then I understand that. But if I can take my 3 or 4 inch and put a trap in it, then they should be able to take their main and put a trap so it don't come to me.
All I know of that area down there is it's a combined area, so somewhere in and around where you're at, I guess it would be to the east, everything combines and goes down there. Now, if it's a matter of the outlet being so big, there might not be anything else. It can only put so much, it can only, push so much through it. The hydraulic grade line backs up, and then it just blows out of people's basements. I can't speak
But we,
You know, I don't even want to guess what's going on. I could check with the authority.
But I
and
was
That's what
see.
I'm asking, can we look into that?
yeah, I think we can, entertain a conversation with
Yeah,
the
we-
Altoona Water Authority for that.
Yeah.
We can reach out to them tomorrow because they're a separate entity from us, so we can't really speak to what they're doing over there or what's causing the problem without really speaking to them about it first. So,
That's
but
what
we
I'm
can do
mainly
that.
asking is if
We can
can
do
look
that
into it
and
and
follow
see.
up with you though.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you,
You're
sir.
welcome.
Contact for him then? Okay.
Victor, is there anybody on the phone? Okay. Okay, if there's no other public comment, we will close the floor and move on to the resolutions.
Item A is approving the minutes of the Altoona City Council meeting held Tuesday, June 15th, 2021. Item B is approving the minutes of the Altoona City Council work session held Monday, June 28th, 2021. Item C is authorizing the city manager to execute a memorandum of understanding for the Federal Justice Assistance Grant funds with Blair County and for the city clerk to attest to same, and further authorizing the mayor to execute the necessary certifications required to submit the application. Item D is awarding the blighted property demolition bid for 1902 10th Street, 1318 North 4th Avenue, and 1808 11th Street to Earth Movers Unlimited of Kylertown in the amount of $27,760 payable from the city's contingencies or general fund reserves to be reimbursed by the Community Development Block Grant Blighted Property Program, and further authorizing the city manager to execute all documents and the city clerk to attest to same. Item E is awarding the blighted property demolition bid for 1800 6th Avenue to G&R Excavating and Demolition of Tyrone in the amount of $20,400 payable from the city's contingency fund or general fund reserves to be reimbursed by the CDBG Blighted Property Program, and further authorizing the city manager to execute all documents and the city clerk to attest to same. Item F is approving the submission of a grant application to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania for a multimodal transportation fund grant in the amount of $1,670,625 for the Altoona Transportation Center Improvement Project, and further authorizing the city manager to execute all documents associated with the grant application and for the city clerk to attest to same as needed. Item G is approving a repository bid in the amount of $250 submitted by J. Mark Michella of 171 Sylvan Oaks Drive, Hollidaysburg, for property located at 521 8th Avenue, and for authorizing the city manager to execute the taxing district form. Item H is hereby authorizing the city solicitor to proceed with the filing of the necessary paperwork to initiate an eminent domain proceeding with respect to the real property located at 1306 11th Avenue in the city of Altoona. Are there any additions, deletions, or anything that needs to be pulled for a separate vote? Hearing none, I'll call for the consent vote. Vice Mayor Butterbaugh.
Yes.
Councilman Kashadi.
Yes.
Councilman Carper.
Yes.
Councilman Ickes.
Yes.
Councilwoman Jordan.
Yes.
Councilman Kelly.
Yes.
Mayor Pacifico.
Yes.
And the vote passes 7-0. We have an ordinance for introduction, which is an ordinance of the City of Altoona, Blair County, Pennsylvania, creating Chapter 289, demolition or partial demolition of buildings and other structures, providing definitions, administration, procedures and regulations, enforcement and penalties with respect to demolition of buildings and structures in the City of Altoona, providing severability of provisions and providing an effective date. Is there a council member willing to introduce this ordinance?
Motion.
Is that Councilman Ickes?
Yes.
This ordinance was introduced by Councilman Ickes. That will come back again then at the August meeting.
Thank you.
We have one ordinance for adoption, and it was introduced by Mayor Pacifico. It's an ordinance of the City of Altoona, Blair County, Pennsylvania, which amends Chapter 800 42 of the Altoona City Code as it pertains to small wireless facilities, and creates new Chapter 595 of the Altoona City Code titled Small Wireless Facilities, relating to permitting, placement, installation, and standards for small cell wireless communication facilities in the public rights-of-way. This ordinance, let's see, I need a motion for adoption.
So moved.
May I just, I know with the passage of the act, we needed to, within the last approximate week or 10 days, the state legislature, yeah, I turned it on. Yeah, I did. They passed legislation relative to small wireless facilities in the state of Pennsylvania. And Nate and I we took preliminary examinations of it. There are some minor changes we'll need to make to this ordinance. Nothing major. It pertains to the weight, as far as the time frame for initial review, overall review, fee schedules. There will be some amendments that will need to be made.
Should we table the adoption?
I would table the adoption at this
Okay.
point, yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, moving on to the city manager updates. Omar.
Thanks, Mayor and council members. Just a few items to update you on. Tomorrow, we will be hosting a lunch meeting with the city senior leadership team. The discussion will kick off the budgeting process, so we're already to that point. Just kind of want everybody to know that. And we'll also be updating the city's capital improvement program, which we did not do last year. So that'll be involved, and we'll be coming back to council with information on that in the near future as well. A reminder that the meetings in relation to the American Rescue Plan Act have been set. They are both at 6 o'clock. First one is Tuesday, July 20th at the Altoona Area High School. The second is Monday, August 16th at the DeVore Center in Penn State's downtown center. The city's audit has been completed. It was circulated to council. The auditor, the acting finance director, and I will be meeting with the auditor to discuss that tomorrow morning. The auditor will be scheduled at a meeting in the near future to present the audit to council. At the next meeting, the August meeting of council, we're going to present a mid-year financial update for your review. And just wanted to tell you that I'm spending quite a bit of time involved in and preparing for collective bargaining. So a lot of work and time is going into that effort. Any questions?
No, but I think if for the folks that came tonight to talk about some of the stormwater issues, and certainly the basement backing up is also a stormwater issue, we are having 2 public meetings to take comment from the community as to suggestions for this America Recovery Plan money. And Omar, again, those dates and locations are?
Yeah, so the first meeting is Tuesday, July the 20th at the Altoona Area High School. The second meeting is Monday, August the 16th at the DeVore Center at Penn State's downtown facilities.
Both at 6 p.m.
Both,
6 p.m.
yes, yes.
Yes.
And and I would say that for the benefit of not just you folks, but anyone who's listening to this meeting, that's an opportunity to come and share that, because we're trying to reach out to the community so that we make the best use of that money. It's one-time money, and will be, that money can be used to do some of the things that we're talking about, and we want to hear from the community, and that's another opportunity to. It's going to be more of a. It's not going to be really a give and take so much as it is listening to the public with suggestions. So it would give you the opportunity to to talk and address some specifics about some needs. And I would encourage you to do that, because I guarantee other people are going to show up and talk about that, so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Omar. Moving on to council discussion items. Councilman Kelly.
I think I just did it.
Okay. Councilman Carver.
I have nothing to add at this time. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Ickes.
I'm sorry for the stormwater issues you folks are having, but I would like to say it's really nice to see people in the audience again. So
Yeah.
thank you for coming up and participating in the civic process here. Thank you.
Councilman Kashadi.
Just wanted to quickly say thank you to the chief for his report, and also just kind of give a shout out in general to the APD. Last week, my son and I, my 3-year-old, we were downtown watching trains going by, and took a walk around downtown, and saw some of the officers getting ready for their shift, and they were, just very nice to us. Just gave my son a sticker with a badge sticker, and the shield sticker, and let him get a picture with the police officers in front of the plane and everything else. Then they had to run really quick because they were going out to do their job. But just wanted to say thank you for that. So appreciate everything that you all are doing. That's all I have.
Councilman Butterbaugh.
Nothing here. Thanks, Mayor.
Councilwoman Jordan.
Not at this time, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to questions from the media now. Bill.
Thank you. I guess this is for Joe. The homicide numbers in 2020, does that mean 4 individuals charged with homicide? 4 victims. Okay. If you had your druthers and money wasn't an object, I guess, how many officers would you like to have?
Well, I'd probably say an astronomical number that's not realistic.
Well, realistic number. I
But
guess.
realistically, since I've worked at the Altoona Police Department, the highest we were at was 74. We were able to accomplish a lot of good things at that number. Whether that's realistic or not, I don't know.
And I guess for council, does that number sound realistic, given the financial obligations it would impose?
I think taking one bite of the elephant at the time is the best avenue at this point. So if we can get back to pre-COVID-19 levels, that would be a great start.
And that would be 66?
Yes, sir.
Anybody else have anything to say about that? Okay, the eminent domain authorization, that is for McCrory's, is that correct?
That's correct,
Okay.
yes.
And Tom, what would be the deadline for action by the owner before that triggers your action to file that?
I will be having a discussion with Attorney 4 tomorrow. I did have some discussions with him today, because if you recall, when we were here at the work session 2 weeks ago, there was discussion of they were getting an appraisal and things of that nature, and we don't have that yet. So I think we're looking to see that information no later than by the end of the week. So that's kind of where I'm at with that at this point in time, and that's kind of the instructions I've received from council.
So if they get an appraisal, is the idea that you would take that number to the city and see if the city's willing to pay that? Is that kind of it?
That would be the starting point of that. Yes, it would. Yeah.
Is that something that wouldn't be done and wouldn't need to be done in public, correct? Or am I wrong about that?
Well, as far as the negotiation, the negotiating part of it, that's something that would occur between the city and the property owner. As far as if there's any final agreement, that's something that's going to be, addressed and approved at a public meeting, because you're using public funds.
Okay. Nate,
regarding the Adams Avenue flooding, was that more a matter of water coming down from the Brush Mountain side into those pipes that the man was talking about, or a matter of the creek coming up, or both?
I don't know if I can really tell you for sure, Bill. It came out of the sky. It was just so, I mean, in that particular instance that gentleman was talking about, it was so high and so bad. It came from everywhere. You know, that's the one that we've been talking about, and I've seen in the newspaper a couple times now. So,
So both would be fair, I guess?
ask the good Lord, he'll tell you.
Okay.
But yeah, it's coming everywhere. I mean, that one was just everywhere.
Okay. And when you were talking about that being the second area on your list, the first area would be Mansion Park, is that right?
There were three main areas, I would say, as a whole, and there are a couple outliers here and there that kind of roll into this entire situation. But I would say the Mansion Park area is one because of its location, the Mill Run. Garden Heights is the second one because of its location, kind of sitting out by itself without a great storm system. The third is Pleasant Valley. And there's no particular rhyme or reason as to where we picked we just had to get one started and get going with it. And then the other one was like Old Town, like the city proper, like up behind City Hall, heading out towards 28th Avenue, like 13th Street.
Fairview?
Yeah, you can call it Fairview. And again, a lot of it is just, there were areas that were annexed into the city. The stormwater wasn't, really looked at. People just tried to get water away from them as quick as they could. And, the roads were dirt and tar and chip, and then they got paved and things weren't kind of developed. Just not real great planning practices over the years, but it's not atypical of any other municipality out there. So those, I'm giving you a bonus too. I gave you a fourth one tonight.
That's right, yeah, I appreciate that.
No problem.
I guess, Tom, is the stormwater projects that could be done to alleviate the problems that these people came to talk about today, are they eligible for American Rescue Plan money?
Yeah, we understand that is an area that money could potentially be spent on. And as the council was alluding to earlier, that is something they're looking for, the citizens of the city to bring to their attention at these upcoming meetings.
And the grant application for, I guess for you too, the grant application that was approved in the resolution for the transportation center, is that for PennDOT or through PennDOT or DCED?
Okay, the grant.
DCED.
Okay. You guys already applied for the PennDOT the second time, right?
No, we applied for DCED and PennDOT, and this would be the second round of DCED. Same project, second.
Oh, but the
round.
PennDOT, you haven't applied the second time.
It didn't come out yet. It didn't open back up yet. But we weren't successful at either one, the first round.
Right. And then one final thing, what is the significance, maybe Omar, what is the significance of the demolition ordinance? Or the demolition ordinance introduction?
Right now, the engineering department has regulations regarding the protection of public property. The International Building Code references that is a permits required for demolition. And the International Building Code references protection of private property. But there is nothing, they all have to be combined, basically. And there's nothing that states that there's anything required for seeding, backfilling, things like that. That's up to each municipality to adopt.
So this kind of brings it all together?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. This meeting is adjourned.